address. So I can, in any case, say hello to everyone. Thank you to our guests for being here, and thank you for people joining us today. We are going to address an important issue, rhetoric argumentation in digital era, or to say more properly in post-digital era. So we have already reflected in the past in the framework of our Débat sur le débat seminar about these issues. And in particular, we had a conversation with Francesca Piazza, Salvatore Di Piazza, and Mauro Serra in 2022, where we asked the question, y a-t-il assez de rhétorique dans la sphère publique? Is there enough rhetoric in the public sphere? And you have in the chat the link to that conversation. Today, we are pleased to continue discussing these topics with three wonderful, esteemed colleagues and friends. So in a strict alphabetic order, and in any case, ladies first, Claudia Coppola, Marcin Kosow, e Andrea Rocci. Claudia is one of the founder members of our observatory, Hollandinum. She's a postdoctoral assistant at IALSA, Institute of Argumentation, Linguistics and Semiotics of the USI, Università della Svizzera Italiana, the University of the Italian Switzerland in Lugano. She works under the scientific supervision of Professor Sara Greco and Professor Andrea Rocci. She earned in 2024 a PhD in linguistics under the supervision of Professor Edoardo Lombardi Vallauri, who joined us today. And her current research explores the intersection of argumentation and pragmatic linguistics, primarily in the context of a public debate, public discourse. She collaborates on the Orbis project, which develops tools to promote inclusion in deliberative democracy. She is with Andrea, I think, if I understood correctly, coordinator of the master's program in European Studies in Investor Relations and Financial Communication at USI. Marcin Kosovi is currently an associate professor in the Department of Philosophy and Ethics in the Administration at the Faculty of Administration and Social Sciences of the Warsaw University of Technology in Poland. Marcin is a member of the International Center for Formal Ontology and a research affiliate of the Language and Cognition and Argumentation Group based at the University of Amsterdam. Today, Marcin is with us in his role as deputy head of the Laboratory of the New Ethos research lab directed by Kasia Budzinska. The new ethos researchers focus on studying persuasion strategies that appeal to ethos, that is, strategies that rely on references to a speaker's or an agent character in order to persuade. Marcin's research lies at the intersection of logic, pragmatics, and artificial intelligence. And I am also very pleased to introduce you, Andrea Rocci, who is full professor for language sciences and deputy director of the Institute of Argumentation, Linguistics and Semiotics at l'Università della Svizzera Italiana. He co-directs the Master of European Studies in Investor Relations and Financial Communication. He has published extensively in the fields of argumentation theory, pragmatics, semantics, and discourse analysis. Among his major works, we may mention a monograph on the relationship between modal expressions and argumentation, published in 2017, and with Marcel Danesi, a textbook on the contribution of linguistics to intercultural understanding, global linguistics. Professor Rocci has led and he continues to lead several research projects funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation, focusing on argumentation in journalism, corporate communication, and financial communication. So thank you very much to the three of you to be here with us today. Our guests are collaborating on the I Trust project, which is a project funded by the KISTIA program, which tackles the challenges of digitalization that digitalization is raising for trust, which is a key component of public debate. And I think that our guest will tell us more about this project in a few minutes. I would like just to summarize few words, few concepts that were already introduced in previous discussions in Débat sur les débats, namely the notion of rhetoric, the notion of ethos, pathos, and logos. So let's go back to Aristotle, who defines rhetoric as the technique that identifies the means by which practical discourse can persuade. According to Aristotle, rhetoric is a power combination of three elements: logos, pathos, and ethos. Logos refers to the logical coherence and force of the argument itself. Pathos is the ability of the discourse to stir emotion in the listener, and ethos is the credibility that the speaker manages to establish through their words. So rhetoric is more than just argumentation in the strict sense. It is a technique that draws on the speaker's ability to evoke emotion and earn trust, all with the goal of persuading the other. Our guests will feel free, of course, of to correct these general definitions. But I would like immediately to start by directing first question to everyone. So we expect in this post-digital era that a reconfiguration of traditional rhetoric. So how do you see rhetoric changing in this area, in this age, compared to traditional rhetoric in terms of the configuration of the agora, the use of multimodal channels, and a changed participant interaction? The floor is yours. Huh? You can choose the order. I don't know who wants to answer first.
I can go first.
Go ahead, Andrea. Thank you.
So I go first, so I can do the easy stuff. I think the elements, if I think of the elements that change most the rhetoric and the agora, and also these are also the elements that make certain aspects that we will discuss later. I think like the idea of polylogue, very relevant, are really the ones that are singled out in this in this book. I guess Paula knows this. So the fact that the sender of the message is not easily identifiable, the receiver is often indefinite, the channel is noisy, and also there is a lack of distinction between the fleeting spoken word and what remains as a written testimony of a discussion. All these aspects make it the agora very different than what, for instance, Aristotle could have in mind when he wrote the rhetoric. You were in front of an audience, and you could exactly know who your audience were, the distinction between the participants and those who did not participate in the event was really clear cut. There was no recording, so it's not like our current interaction that is being recorded. And so other people will receive it later on through a different channel. At the time, the spoken word was not recorded, and so you could see, okay, these are my audience. I can know them. I can know what are their questions, what are their objections. I can make concession to them to establish a common ground. But nowadays, that's hardly possible in the kind of digital agora we are in.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yes, if I can just elaborate on that. It's not only who the people that are involved who are not easy to retrieve and identify, but also what they said and when and exactly how they said it. Even though we live in a world full of words, so to say, we have this impression that the debate is actually very, very rich. But in fact, words and utterances are sometimes difficult to retrieve. We can somehow reuse it, reshape it, and then what was originally said is actually can be very hard to identify and retrieve. And this is something we will delve into later on. So this is something worth mentioning now.
Thank you, Claudia. Marcin, do you want to add?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I wouldn't say, Andrea, that this is like just saying the easy stuff. I would rather say that this was like the very good preliminary introductory remarks for me to make it quite easier to follow up on what you both said. So basically, if you allow me to share my screen with you for just a second, this is related basically to this idea. So this is one of our lab's paper on computational methods to study ethos, and this is basically what we start with. So this reconfiguration of traditional rhetoric is about having exactly what Andrea has said. This center with the speaker and the audience who can recognize speaker, and ethos, pathos, and logos are quite interactive in the Aristotelian way. When Aristotle defined ethos, for instance, as a mode of persuasion that goes through the very public speaking enterprise. And this was quite accurately, very accurately described by Andrea, because in the digital society, in the post-digital era, as Paola has mentioned that at the very beginning, we have this decentralized, so right-hand side of this figure, the centralized picture when everyone can be a subject of ethos, a bearer of ethos, a subject that does some pathotic practices, some pathotic techniques, and also does logos, of course. But the idea is that in this decentralized situation, we have quite a few speakers. There is not a central place in the agora where someone is like the bearer of ethos, and this changes ethotic, pathotic interactions in the society. So basically, this is not only new rhetoric, not only in terms of the methods to study rhetoric in the digital society with new tools and rhetoric spread over social media, digital media, but also about the very subject matter of inquiry, which is different with respect to this decentralization. And just the last thing, I wanted to also follow up on what Claudia said about these ways of reshaping information. So basically, what is very interesting is the fact that one of the rhetorical tools as reformulation can be a very important toolkit for either boosting someone's ethos or attacking someone's ethos by rephrasing, but also it's not only about such phenomena as hate speech, but also fake news, because even a very slight modification of what's been said before can be a starting point to spread misinformation and disinformation. And this is also naturally rhetorical enterprise, but it has a wider social impact. So this is how I would like to follow up on what you said before. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you. Thank you to Claudia and Andrea. So let's focus now on ethos, a notion that we have mentioned already a few times in this discussion. Martin, I'm sorry, you work at the new laboratory of the new ethos. That's the correct name of your research lab. So can you tell us more about the challenges that your research group is addressing in this context about ethos?
Thank you so much again. So let me just share my screen again so that I can show you some slides. Yes. First of all, let me say that Kasia Budzyńska, who chairs the new Ethos Lab at the Warsaw University of Technology, she sends her sincere apologies because due to a very important meeting at the university that wasn't movable at all, she couldn't participate in our meeting. However, it's my great pleasure to be a person to present some major ideas related to our work during this meeting. And we are the new ethos group. Let me also show you our website. So we define ourselves as a group, bunch of scholars studying persuasion strategies of referring to ethos, the people's character. And of course, what Paola said about ethos, pathos, and logos, this is also important for us because, first of all, the key thing is that we cannot study ethos, the character of the speaker, of appeals to ethos, the character, the credibility, the trustworthiness of speakers, if we don't map it on both pathos and logos and see what's the relation between ethos and pathos and ethos and logos. And then we can see how persuasive, how complex are appeals to ethos. And basically, let me start from saying that follow up on what I said before about this reconfiguration of traditional rhetoric. So the basic idea is that we deal with the new ethos. So if we were to unpack this name of our lab in two senses. The first meaning is that The new ethos is about the new ways, the novel ways of employing language for ethotic purposes. So this is basically the key thing related to the very subject matter of studying ethos. The second thing is that it's also about the methods to study ethos, because the novel methodology needs to grasp these large-scale ways of manipulating ethos and also using ethos in a legitimate manner for the purpose of successful persuasion. And this is why our studies have these 4 features you can see on the website: empirical, scalable, formal, and hopefully impactful. So this is the idea of bridging together scholars who work in philosophy of argumentation, computer science, artificial intelligence, quite recently psychology, but also philosophers who study ethics, as well, given this quite natural link between ethos and ethical considerations, ethical issues too.
Marco, sto lavorando, non posso.
In order to be able to do large-scale analysis of ethos, understood broadly, then as comparable to Aristotelian notion of ethos. So the idea is that as long as Aristotle understood ethos as a feature of persuasion, a mode of persuasion that happens through the very manner of public speaking, in our idea is to treat ethos broader, and we're absolutely not the only ones who do so. So, for instance, Jens Kiltsen from Bergen University or Aaron Hess from Arizona State University, they also have this broader notion of ethos. So the broader notion of ethos, firstly, covers not only doing ethos through the manner of speaking, but addressing ethos of other people or entities, other entities like institutions, governments. So this can be larger groups. This could be individuals, in order to either support them or attack them. And this is an important change in the study of ethos, but it's not like doing a revolution and not disregarding Aristotle. So we feel, and we are strongly convinced that this traditional rhetorical take of Aristotle and classical rhetoric in general is extremely helpful to study ethos as a linguistic and societal phenomenon. So this is like a general rationale and motivation for our study, but also if you see such, this is nothing novel, but basically if we look at, for instance, political debates, we may notice that everything that happens in the debate can be interpreted from the point of view of ethos. So everything that presidential candidates in, say, US televised presidential election debates, they do, everything they say, can be interpreted either in terms of boosting up their own ethos or attacking the ethos of the opponent in numerous ways. Also, if we take key phenomena in the digital society. Although there are very quite a few desirable phenomena, the undesirable ones are, for instance, spreading fake news or having this common space for hate speech. Of course, hate speech is can be conceived and perceived like extremely idiotic if we imagine ad hominem attacks. But for instance, there are numerous subtle ways of using hate speech that do not contain slurs, do not contain offensive language. So we can imagine a situation, and this is quite a common thing, that there is hate speech without offensive language, without attacking the opponent personally or the group someone dislikes. So this is extremely powerful device. Also, fake news. So quite a few fake news are related to ethos. Types of fake news can be related to ethos if we perceive them as those fake news that either diminish the dignity of a person or groups by spreading fake information, misinformation about them, or spreading untrue persona, untrue picture of a person, of a group, like stereotypes. So so all these phenomena can be viewed in terms of ethos. So this is the main as far as I can tell, the rationale and motivation for our systematic study of ethos within the new ethos group. If you want me to stop here, maybe I can follow up.
Yeah, because I
detail.
had a curiosity about the methods and the tool you are
Okay.
using. I was telling the audience that you are using AI methods to explore the online context. So can you please tell us more about the data and data analysis that you perform at the New Ethos
Yes,
laboratory?
sure. So we deal with, as you can see here, can you see my screen now?
We can.
Thank
That's
you.
perfect.
Digitalization as a broad phenomena. Here are some of our collaborators. Some of them are present here during this meeting, and as you can see here, we in the iTrust project that has been already mentioned, we are trying to develop a deeper understanding of misbehaviors on social media and media in general. So these two areas I already mentioned are fake news and hate speech, but there's also polarization, on which I can follow up later. And we employ, to studying these three phenomena, we employ, well, first of all, fake news, hate speech, and polarization are phenomena that can create echo chambers as undesirable phenomena. And strategies to spread this misbehavior can be employed via argumentation, idiotic and pathotic rhetorical strategies, but also, and this is a follow-up on what Claudia said earlier, reshaping some pieces of information, stories, narratives. So this recognized research area of reframing. Now, how to detect those phenomena? So, via mining, argument mining, or broadly some discursive data mining, and also analytics. So before mining and analytics, we of course have corpus studies and annotation where we either manually or automatically extract. So if we do that manually, this is of course annotation, and if we do automatic annotation, this would be directly mining. But the idea is that first, in order to do some manual annotation, we need to have deeper insights into communication phenomena we are annotating, and this is like quite a typical thing in argumentation-driven corpus linguistics approach to digital rhetoric. And the idea of analytics, this is something that I would like to describe in in a smaller detail. So basically, this comes from what I said before in terms of the rationale of our research on ethos. So basically, if you imagine researchers, scholars doing argument mapping and having debates that last for like 45 minutes, 2 hours, they analyze the whole transcript, they obtain argumentation maps. And the idea of analytics is to apply computer science tools, visualizations to make sense of the graphs, because we may have argumentation scholars who are very much into those graphs and they can study those features. But in order to make it more popular, in order to make it more public and comprehensive to the audience who don't have to be lay people, but also academics working in different areas, the idea of analytics, argument analytics, rhetoric analytics, is to provide us with some visualizations, infographics that present, so are automatically extracted from the data, and they show statistical tendencies in the media, like statistical tendencies of using hate speech, statistical tendencies of spreading fake news, whatever is the phenomenon we want to analyze. Paola, how am I doing with time?
No, it's okay. I mean,
Thanks.
I would like to talk about more in particular about one of the tools that you are using, the Lipen, but it's okay. So go ahead with your speech. There is no problem.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So sure. Sure. So if you want me to stop here, I can then follow up on Lepan too, because this is
Okay.
something I also
Yeah,
prepared for
yeah.
today.
Please introduce these tools, the Leban, in particular the Leban tool. Please tell us more about what are the key findings you have from the application of this tool to your
Yeah.
purpose.
Okay. Just a second, please. Please wait a second. Yeah, so I'm almost, yeah. So not everyone is for sure familiar with this LEPAN or LEPAN analytics. So let me just follow up on that. So Lipan analytics, but what I said before is very much related. Can I excuse you for a second? Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So waiting for Martin, please do not hesitate if you have questions, if you need clarification.
I'm very sorry. So I had some
okay.
problems with the light. It's working now. So
I was, Martin, I was saying that our audience can ask questions or even asking clarifications using the chat. Then we will have an Q&A time, but if they need to ask questions, don't forget that we have a chat and that we monitor the chat, so you can ask your question. Go ahead, Martin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. And sorry for the short break. So yeah, so if you see, Paola, if you see a question on the chat, then let me know, because I'm following the slides and it would be difficult for me to track both. Thanks. So basically, the very idea of LEPAN, which stands for Logos, Ethos, Pathos, Analytics, stems from the idea of analyzing the structure of argumentation related to dialogue and related to illocutionary forces. So this is related to inference anchoring theory by Budzyńska and Reed, who have built this not only the theory, but the related methodology to map argumentation. When we have a graph presenting what's on the right-hand side, this is dialogue, dialogical structures. Logical structures with the content on the locutions are on the left-hand side, and in the middle there are illocutionary forces, namely speakers' intentions, like agreeing, disagreeing, arguing, affirming, and of course, asserting. For questions, those illocutionary forces can be like rhetorical questioning or pure questioning or assertive questioning, for instance. Next, the very idea of argument analytics, this is exactly it. We have a large argumentation maps, and it is difficult to make sense of them. If we are argumentation scholars who are very familiar with the graphs, that makes sense for them. But this is the idea of having strategies for logos, ethos, and pathos, not only annotated, but presented in terms of the analytics that show what's really going on with ethos, pathos, and logos, and what are the typical tendencies of using ethos, pathos, and logos in the discourse. And this is the idea of argument analytics by ArcTech, University of Dundee, the group led by Chris Reed, when we have a debate and we have various infographics that show what's really going on in a discourse. One of the infographics is like-mindedness. So this is like who is like-minded with whom, and how we can frame the debate, well, describe the debate in terms of like the division line. So the data tell us who is defending one of the claims, who is defending a pro-claim, and who is defending the con claim. So what is the idea of the controversy when we have speakers and who is on which side? And this is not predefined, this is not a priori, this is taken from the data. So this is this idea, and this can tell us a lot about ethos and logos. Logos, because the content of what's been said is so we given that this content is mapped and then translated into analytics, we see what's the like-mindedness in terms of the logos, for instance, what the content of the discourse. And given this idea, we did data analysis, which is related to this project that I've already mentioned, I Trust, which is about interventions against polarizations in society for trustworthy social media. And these are two important bits here, like not only diagnosis, but also therapy, like interventions. So this is the idea of this project. And the data we took for this is COP summits of leaders, influencers on social media, and also public reactions to what these influencers say. So these are the data. As you can see, we have not only politicians, but activists like, for instance, Leo DiCaprio or Greta Thunberg. And we have the data with what influencers have said and also the reactions of the followers. And we study not only logos, but also ethos and pathos. So ethos, like who is attacked or whose claim is attacked, whose claim is supported, and pathos, not in the sense now of evoking, eliciting emotions, but rather in terms of expressing emotions. So eliciting emotions is a very important part of key part of pathos, but this requires also experimental studies to measure the persuasiveness of emotional appeals. So we have influencers called here rhetors, and we have reactions on Twitter, and the topic, one of the topics is climate change. And another topic is US presidential elections. As you can see, within our method, we have rhetors in the political US presidential election debate, and we have influencers on Twitter. We have reactions to the US debates on Reddit, and we have reactions to reactions on Twitter to the discussion on climate change on Twitter. And we call these, so because of the fact that this is about polarization issues on social media, we have four corpora. Polaris 1, polarization issues 1, which is discussions on COVID vaccinations on Reddit. Twitter discussions on COVID vaccination is Polaris 2. Discussions on climate change on Reddit is Polaris 3, and Polaris 4, Twitter discussions on climate change. And the idea is to study those tweets and reactions to them, but also what's been said in presidential debates and social media reactions to the debates using OVA annotation tool, which stands for Online Visualization of Arguments. So this is built upon the inference anchoring theory by Budzinska and Reed, I've already mentioned. And here the idea is that we study logos, ethos, and pathos in terms to build LEPAN analytics, we treat them in terms of annotation layers. So this is a very important thing here related to our methodology, because you, Paula, asked me to describe it in terms of the methods, right? So this is what I would like to emphasize here. So logos is basically, well, this is not going to be a great definition, but argumentation and the content of what's been said. Yes, ethos, it's either supporting someone's credibility, trustworthiness, or attacking it. And pathos is expressed here in this narrow sense, expressing emotions, although I'm aware that the very notion of pathos is way broader. Okay, so what we have here is the annotation, and as you can see, this is done in Excel spreadsheets. We have the full text, we have the source, we have the sentence. We can annotate even it in a way to show that there's, for instance, no ethos in the expression. Another expression can contain ethos, and then if they contain, it can be either ethos support or ethos attack. Yes. So this is how we deal with the data for ethos studies. And also it allows us to distinguish, disentangle the layer of frames or topics. And this is when we merge ethos with topics, pathos with topics, we can obtain quite interesting matrix. Then entities. So this is something we are currently working on to add on top of that the knowledge of entities. So for instance, if we take US 2024 presidential election debates, so there are some entities that Kamala Harris has mentioned, and there are entities that Trump has mentioned. And both their what they said in the discourse as speakers, for each speaker, we can see that if we analyze what they said in terms of what entities were mentioned, like, I don't know, National Rifle Association, China, Russia, Democrats, Republicans, US nation, whatever the entity is, we can, by analyzing the data and by having this entity analysis, we can see what kind of a world emerges from what each of the speakers has been saying during the whole debate. And this is the idea of also recognizing those entities as etotic, because the way you mention entities, you can mention entities in a neutral way, but you can mention entities in a positive manner or with a negative flavor. So this is also quite important in terms of having this particular annotation layer, so to speak. Yes. Next, what might be also interesting, and there's in fact a paper from our group with our close collaborator Alina Landowska from the Warsaw University of Social Psychology to study, to treat moral values as an annotation layer. So if you can imagine that we have these layers, if we merge them and we have this matrix, it tells us a lot about not only logos, but also how logos is related to emotions, how logos is related to moral values, which also has some etotic component in it, for instance. And also this is like, if we go back to Aristotle, and this is what Paula started from, this very much aligns with the idea of Aristotle that ethos, pathos, and logos are interrelated. And our idea for the LEPAN analytics, logos, ethos, pathos analytics, is exactly this. It's exactly to see how ethos, logos, and pathos are systematically connected given topics, given genre, given kinds of media we have, and this is why we have this matrix where we have not only topics but also Twitter, Reddit, and then we can compare the media too. Okay, so also expressed emotions as a layer, offensive language, and these three dots manifest the possibility of developing it. So, for instance, we may do illocutionary forces or speech acts analyzed as a layer. Yeah. And these three, like moral values, expressed emotions, and offensive language, are the topic of our current study. And frames and entities, this is something for the future. And we can also see it in terms of like local global distinction, because if we have some local ways of addressing ethos, like attacking, supporting ethos, given those, given that we can study them large scale, we can obtain a general picture of the frames of ways ethos, pathos, and logos are packed, are well framed or are formulated. So this is basically this general idea. Now, data analytics for LEPAN. We have, for instance, so this is as you can see, this is the interface for our analytics tool. We can have single corpus analysis, we can have comparative corpus analysis, we can explore corpora, and for instance, we have a comparative study. We can tick two corpora, like US presidential 2016 reactions to the US 2016 debates on Reddit, and we can have discussions on Reddit on conspiracy theories. So as you can see, we have two different topics, the same platform, Reddit. And for instance, we can see that in US 2016 presidential election debates, you have a lot of negative pathos, negative emotions, whereas positive emotions are way less frequent. And the idea now is that, okay, we can then formulate some hypotheses about why. But if we see some presidential election debates, we can say that this can be explained given this genre, the goal of political debates right before the elections. Yeah, and if you take pathos in conspiracy theories, this is about vaccinations on Reddit, you may see that the frequency of using negative pathos decreases and the frequency of positive pathos is almost twice frequent as in case of US debates. Yes, and this is the continuation of this our analytics, and we can display posts. So examples. So the analytics can help us displaying some examples, like we have sources. So these are names of the social media users on Reddit. We have texts, and we can then study examples, compare them. Yeah, and yeah, pathos I mentioned. Now ethos. So if we compare ethos in US 2016 presidential elections, so reactions to the elections on Reddit, versus ethos in discussions on conspiracy theories, also on Reddit, what is quite striking that ethos supports in the reactions on to presidential election debates is significantly higher than ethos supports in discussions related to conspiracy theories on vaccinations, and ethos attacks in conspiracy theories discussions are significantly higher than attacks in the reactions to the debates. Yeah. Then we have logos. So this is like supports and attack in terms of, we have two kinds of supports and attacks. Etotic supports and attacks when I either I'm in favor of someone's credibility and I support it, or I attack someone. And in terms of logos, it's just inference and conflict. So if I infer, so there are logotic supports, so premises supporting conclusions. And if there are conflicts or con arguments, this is called logotic attacks. So there are different kinds of attacks, and of course for logos and for ethos it works differently. Although etotic attacks in terms of like undermining someone's credibility or trustworthiness can be related to conflict on the propositional level, like disagreements in terms of logos. So this is why we call them layers of, and we treat them as layers of annotation, because then we can see how some phenomena overlap. Yeah. Yes. And this is the idea of this comparative study. We can also study pathos behavior distribution, so or the behavior score for ethos, and then we can also do moral values analytics, but maybe I can stop here because your question, Paula, was basically related to logos, ethos, and pathos and the related analytics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this very intriguing methodology and for the presentation of it. So I would have a few questions about your analysis on pathos. You sent us two recently published articles, one called Joyful and Triumphant, and the other a study of online offensive language and political polarization. We don't have much time to discuss both of them, but please, just in a few words, the main finding of one or the other or both, as you want, but with the focus of the kind of findings you can obtain by applying this methodology. So, what do you find in the corpus concerning pathos?
Pathos, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me just show you. the idea to study pathos. So in a way, this is something that can be treated as going more into details from logos, ethos, and pathos analytics. Yes. So what I find extremely interesting about that is that there are famous and recognized works in, for instance, social psychology that can tell us a lot about pathos, of course, and we have this famous Plutchik's flower for emotions. So the way emotions are certain emotions are related to one another, and this is the our study of pathos is related to some such questions like what the orator needs to know to produce emotions in the hearers. So this is not only about what I previously mentioned, just expressing emotions, but now eliciting emotions, right? And we have such emotions from Plutchik's categorizations and like joy, fear, anger, sadness, and disgust. So these are basic. There are way more types of emotions there, but something to start with. And we are so the idea is to merge or do some interdisciplinary research that benefits both from psychology and argumentation theory. And if we take arguments from, for instance, televised pre-election debates in the US, like these preliminaries, and the reactions to them on social media, we can treat social media as specific reactions to what's been said in the debate. And to this respect, by studying emotional reactions to what social media users hear during the debate, and then they are writing, and then they are typing comments on Twitter or Reddit. That's the idea of like measuring pathos in terms of what influenced the audience during the debate, right? So basically, this is this kind of idea, and computational linguistics tools and computation and corpus linguistic tools help us recognize it large scale in order to track the tendencies on social media. And let me just now this was related to ethos, but quite similar idea. So right before US 2024 presidential elections, a couple of days before the elections, Kasia Budzyńska with her PhD student to our group, Ewelina Gajewska, they did the study of ethotic appeals and reactions to those appeals on social media in the debate. And basing on their large-scale research, they did a prediction about who would win presidential elections, basing on the on just social media reactions. Of course, this is not like representative in many ways. So if we take social statistical research, it's not representative, but something that can reveal the tendencies. Yes, and this prediction was right. So because suddenly, and it was like a couple of days before elections, the tendency to to being etotically active in terms of attacking one candidate was like or like doing this negative ethos strategies was really significant. So basically this was the idea, and this is like also a thing we can do in terms of future further research. Yeah, and what might be interesting here in terms of pathos is pathotic argument schemes. When we take argumentation, so I mentioned this this idea of also being very much informed by argumentation theory, and if you take Walton, Reed Macanio, or other works, numerous papers on argumentation schemes and related critical questions, you can take the list of argumentation schemes and study those of them who are related to emotions. Yes? Like you have at etotic arguments, like etotic argumentation schemes like authority, ad hominem, that somehow either support or attack authority. And here we have pathotic argumentation schemes understood as those schemes that are related to eliciting to the activities, discursive activities aimed at evoking, eliciting emotions, right? Like argument from negative consequences, fear appeals, appeals to danger, or appeals to positive consequences, arguments from threat, slippery slope arguments, which are like a chain of negative consequences, arguments from waste, and arguments from need for help. Yeah. And then we can study those arguments as a source of inspiration to design corpus work. So these are this schemes, which I'm not going to discuss in a greater detail given the time. And also there might be an idea of annotating these schemes. So not only annotating, I mentioned annotation layers, not only annotating logos schemes or ethos schemes, but also discursive schemes for pathos. Yeah. So we can have, for instance, danger appeals. I'm not sure if you see well this
we
details.
don't see the details. I mean, actually, I think we are not on the good screen. At least I cannot see your screen now. I see
At all. Andrea, Claudia, can you see my screen? Is it cut into half? Whatever.
Yeah, it is. It is,
Yes,
and there is
we see only the upper part of the
I think that the Zoom window might be covering the.
At the Zoom window. So let me. This.
Or another window of yours.
Yes,
How about now?
Not yet.
Typically, I get that when I have a non-shared window that is covering the window that is being shared.
I can see, so I can see it now. Okay, so I will try to do that once again. Okay. Now. And now.
cool. Now we can see it.
Yes?
Yeah.
Perfect. So if something goes wrong, please let me know. Thank you. Yes? Okay. Yes. So maybe I will try to do the full screen. Okay. Okay. So if we have a content like comments like that really worry people who understand the threats that we face. This is a danger appeal. made by Secretary Clinton. So this is US 2016 presidential election debates. And this study of pathotic argumentation schemes can, for instance, help us see that in some data, emotional appeals constitute 52% of all the arguments in the analyzed debates, which is quite impressive, I would say, or remarkable at least. Yeah. We may have this statistics for manual annotation of argumentation schemes, and we can see what's the role of pathos-related argumentation schemes here. And then we can study, and we study the use of emotion eliciting language. And in some data, as you can see, you have joy, fear, anger, sadness, and disgust. And then, and so this is how this methodology works. That we can obtain the information that emotion eliciting language, for instance, constitutes over 94% of the whole discourse, which is pretty remarkable too. Yes. And there are some other works on this, so maybe I won't go into more details. Maybe I can stop here, and I hope I was able to present some details also on our study on pathos. Thank you.
You were. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So to the audience, please write your questions in the chat so we can move on and leave the floor to Andrea and Claudia, who will talk about logos and a particular aspect of logos, the reasons of the other. So Andrea and Claudia are presenting a recent research, which is not published, I think, yet. So they are working on the need of reconsidering argumentation theory in the current context, and in particular in the context of online communication, by taking into account the need to shift from a dyadic to a polylogical approach, where the analysis of a counter-argumentation and concession in particular becomes particularly relevant. So Andrea, Claudia, thank you very much. The floor is yours. You can present your reasons about the other reasons.
Okay, so I start, and then I will leave the floor to Claudia. We have changed the presentation order, so because we had a more systematic presentation where first Claudia presented the theory and then I presented the application. But we decided to change it a little bit the other way around, because I want first to show the motivation of this work. So we are looking into concessions and counter arguments. And we, at a certain moment, so this is both an offshoot of the ISRAT project and also a real spin-off. We are hoping to have a new people shouting outside. So we are hoping to have a new project funded soon and on this topic, but so now I need to touch wood or iron depending on the region. So let's start with an example of what we mean by concession and counter argument. I would like to start with a post on X. This is a post that was done quite some time ago by Mira Murati. Mira Murati is a computer scientist, and she was the chief technical officer of OpenAI. then she left the company. But at the time of writing this very long post, she was the chief technical officer. And she's addressing the issue of AI and creativity, and in particular AI and artists, or as she called them, creators. So that's it's not exactly the same, but she does a certain framing. And so basically, it's a longer story about how they want to make the world a better place with AI, how they want to change society for the better, and so on and so forth. At a certain moment, she does a concession. At the same time, well, she's saying that with AI, they are empowering artists, designers, and storytellers. They're giving more power to create. They are democratizing creation, and so on and so forth. But at a certain moment, she makes a concession. At the same time, we must be honest and acknowledge that AI will automate certain tasks. So what is a concession? So you concede when first of all, when you have a standpoint, when you have some kind of standpoint that you are defending, but the standpoint is not always declared. Generally speaking, I would say that here her standpoint is that as a whole, the type of AI that the company is developing will benefit creators, artists, writers, designers, so creative people. That will be a benefit for those people. But then she concedes something, and when you concede a concession is that you evoke an argument that could go against your standpoint. You concede an argument for a different standpoint, a standpoint that is incompatible with your own. So it's presented as a concession very clearly. At the same time, so this kind of adversative language, we must. So it's not that she doesn't do that willingly, but she must. The company must be honest. So it's kind of a honesty, and acknowledge what. So what is this big concession? So there is a longer concessive structure. What is this big concession? That AI will automate certain tasks. That's completely obvious. Oh, okay. Or AI will automate certain tasks. That's all the point of AI. So where's this big concession? So here we have something. She concedes. She as if she was making a big concession to someone who has a different opinion. It's not clear who is this someone. And the concession is absolutely trivial. AI will automate some tasks. And that is presented as a possible argument against the standpoint that it would benefit creators. Just as like spreadsheets, changing things for accountants and bookkeepers. So you imagine the fun of doing your bookkeeping by hand, and they ruin that by creating spreadsheets. So the poor accountants who had so much fun doing accounts by hand, now they ruin it. AI tool can do things like writing online ads or making generic images and templates. But it's important to recognize the difference between creative tasks. And see, we have a debate. First, we have all this concessive language, and then we have the counter argument. So yes, they will automate certain things. But there is a counter argument, and then there is a very classic argumentation strategy that was very, Per and Manuel Brestitega were very fond of that. It's the dissociation strategy. But it's important to recognize the difference between temporary creative tasks and the kind of that add lasting meaning and value to society. So they are automating something that is creative, but it's not really creative. It's just temporary creation. The lasting things, they are not automating. And so they're freeing time for artists for the creative process. So we can see certain interesting things. First of all, this whole big post looks like as if it's part of a debate. There is someone contesting something to OpenAI. There is a public debate about AI, and there are some people somewhere in this very complex ecosystem that say, okay, what OpenAI is doing, it's not 100% good. And there are some problems that have to do with artists. If it weren't like that, why this post? And so you expect that in addressing those other arguments, those reasons of the others, Mira Murati makes a concession that is really about what are the reasons of the others. But what's her concession is that someone said, oh, you are going to automate certain things. Who said that? We don't know. So the vagueness of the author of the conceded arguments is one aspect. The very poor, limited propositional content that is being conceded is another problem. She concedes something that is so vague that it's very easy to counter. And I think if you are in an honest discussion, you're supposed to consider the best arguments of your opponents, not the least powerful. But then if you map this concession and counter argument pattern on the real discussion, what do you find? You find that the main complaint of the artists wasn't that they automated certain things, but rather that they took their stuff without paying them in order to train the AI. That was the main complaint. That's completely different complaint. Not that not you're bad because you automate things. You are bad because you use our stuff without paying us in order to then reproduce or recreate what we do without the need of our job. So that was the main complaint, and it's not addressed in this in this concession. So you can see how this kind of message enters a big discussion with a lot of participants without framing precisely which kind of sub-discussion, sub-point is being addressed, with a very vague concession that evokes some kind of discussion that there was being had, and by some counter-argument. How persuasive is this counter-argument depends on your way of framing the original argument that is countered. So we thought that looking at these patterns of concession and counter-arguments could illuminate many features of the chaotic and complex nature of these discussions. That are discussions that are polylogical. So they do not have just two participants. They do not have just an arguer and someone who acts as an opponent of the arguer, maybe as an antagonist or as a questioner or as a critic. but they have multiple audiences and also multiple active participants that over different venues and over time make contributions. The way people use concessions and counter-arguments to position their contribution seem to us to be a very interesting and also linguistically analyzable. You can pinpoint where's the concession, where's the counter-argument. You can say, okay, there was a concession, there was a counter-argument there, and it can be an important indicator of the way a contributor to this large ongoing discussion position its contribution with respect to the broader discussion. But that's enough, I think, for the introduction that motivated our work. I would like to cede the floor to Claudia for a little more in-depth discussion of what counter-argument and concession are.
Yes, thanks, Andrea. So yeah, let's just try to set some key points so to see in the literature where how these concepts were already studied, and so which will make it easier for us to show you even the gaps where we would like to work on. So again, let me show you. So this you can still see the screen now, right?
Yeah, you have to change the scale.
I just have to.
No, you have to change it.
Can you I'll then share the okay.
And you choose the presentation.
Okay. So yes. So we have already mentioned counter-arguments, concessions, which on the one hand are some concepts that we can also understand quite trivially. Then let's see how these were conceived in the theory. So we mentioned counter-arguments to begin with. Counter-argumentation plays a crucial role in argumentation theory, because some contemporary theories of argumentation, such as pragmadialectics, conceive argumentation itself as developing as a response to or anticipation to a critical reaction. So meaning that counter-argumentation defines the very activity of argumentation. So when we attack, when we oppose something to another party's standpoints or argument. But then, so within logic and dialectical approaches to argumentation, counter-argumentation has always been addressed from the point of view of the feasible reasoning. So how can we can defeat the other's reasoning? And of course, it sheds light on evaluation practices. So when we counter-argue someone, we are somehow evaluating their own reasoning. Especially if we consider the quality of an argument as being good or bad, as depending on its ability to withstand criticism in a discussion setting. So counter-argument involves the presentation of reasons against the acceptance of the conclusion of an extant argument. Yes, okay, we have already mentioned an example, but this is just to show you the different categories that have been developed in the literature, starting from Toomey, so starting from the 20th century reflection on it. Imagine an exchange when one says, we should buy a new orchid for our living room, which would be the conclusion of the reasoning. I am now pretty good at taking care of plants, which even in absence of a clear linguistic indicator is an argument supporting the conclusion. And then the other party replies, but the last plant you bought died after 2 weeks. Sometimes in oral conversation, we even begin sentences by saying, but the last plant you bought died after 2 weeks, which is a counter-argument attacking the plausibility of the argument. So again, in an implicit way, which highlights that implicit meanings are always involved somehow, this is how we can represent, and this is how we see how standpoints and arguments are related to each other. So the counter-argument attacks, and in the literature, these kind of attacks were called rebutters, the plausibility of the argument, again, by means of conversational implicatures, because this is not very explicit. When I say, but the last plant you bought died after 2 weeks, I'm actually saying, so I'm actually meaning, I'm actually implying that, no, you are not pretty good at taking care of plants. This is simply not true, which in turn supports the conclusion, the contrary conclusion. So no, we shouldn't buy a new orchid for our living room. But then there's another kind of counter-argumentative activity, which is when we do not attack the plausibility, so the truth of the argument. We do accept its plausibility, but we attack the relevance of it in supporting the conclusion, which is what in the literature was called an undercutter. So imagine two people in a car in 2024, and one of them says, we should take this road, conclusion, because this roadmap says so, argument supporting the conclusion. And the other party says, but that roadmap is 20 years old. This is not to say that the roadmap doesn't say so. So we actually do accept that the roadmap says so. We accept the plausibility of the argument. What is really being attacked, counter-argued, is the relevance of that argument in supporting the conclusion. Like, it's like when we say, and then what? Like, yes, this roadmap might say so, but this is not a relevant reason to take that road. So this counter-argument, again, in turn, supports the contrary conclusion. So here we already see how the whole issue is a bit multifaceted, and there are always target arguments involved, and that implicit meanings can be involved as well, because we do not explicitly say, no, we shouldn't take this road because that, but most of what we say is actually implicit. So this also poses a methodological challenge in terms of reconstruction. Then we mentioned concessions. So trivially, we know that when we concede something, we acknowledge the validity of someone else's standpoint, which was maybe said before, or it could be purely imaginative. And concession always involves the negation of some argumentative inference. Concessions were very much studied in linguistics. So we find, there's a robust body of research in linguistics, but then its argumentative relevance has been acknowledged too. Why? So this is what happens with concessions. We say, yes, I do concede something to you, which would seem to lead to your conclusion, but then I will show you our stronger argument supporting my own conclusion, which is the one that wins in the very end. And in the literature, scholars usually, make a distinction between what they call direct concessions and indirect concessions. And we see that in both cases, argumentation is pretty much involved. It's not just about linguistic indicators that introduce like concessive clauses. When we say, although John is poor, he's happy, we are actually negating some kind of background assumption, some kind of general expectation that according to which if John is poor, he's probably unhappy. So, and we can see that John is poor can be considered an argument supporting the conclusion, the standpoint, John is unhappy. But then we present a contrary standpoint. He is happy. So although it would seem that I was implying that John is unhappy, he's actually happy. So this is what happened. This is how concession is related to argumentation. But then, and this is what we call direct concessions that can be read in terms of conventional implicatures in pragmatics, with a pragmatic lens, where these implicatures are triggered by some lexical indicators. But then we see that in argumentation is even more involved in indirect concessions, such as the one here. That car is stylish and spacious, but it is expensive. Again, that car is stylish and spacious is an argument supporting the conclusion that that car is worth buying. It is expensive does not directly contradict the fact that the car is stylish and spacious, of course. What does it contradict? It contradicts, again, the fact that the conclusion it leads to. So the speaker partially commits to the fact that the car, yes, it could be worth buying because it has some positive qualities, but then the speaker presents a stronger argument in favor of their own conclusion that the car is not worth buying. So this is what, just to show you how in both counter argumentation and concession standpoints, their conclusions are involved, standpoints from other people are involved, because the fact that the car is worth buying, for example, is something that is a point of view that someone else might have raised earlier, might have not raised, but was raised in anticipation to it. So here we see that in both cases, multiple parties are involved, even in dialogical exchanges, but even in monological exchanges, actually, because concessions and counter-arguments, we can find lots of them even in monological discourse. So we can only imagine how things get complicated when we analyze polylogs. So polylogical discussions involving multiple parties with multiple points of view and occurring across different places and time. So what we, how do we see counter-argument and concession? How do we see them as interrelating? Not only because they occur together very often, but because both of them, as we showed, presuppose a target argument, which could be real attested discourse utterance, an anticipation, or a more abstract entity in the discourse, as we showed before with the example taken from the polylog on artificial intelligence. So in a defeasible reasoning setting, counter-argument inherently presupposes an act of concession, because when we counter-argue, we resume, we represent, we can reshape again, we recognize the reasons of the other. So we presuppose at least the concession that the target is an argument. So that's why in our account, counter-argument and concessions should be investigated, cannot be investigated separately, but can reveal a lot on how, on the complex dynamics of polylogs. And this again calls for the development of analytical tools which can account for this complexity in terms of how the different floating arguments and standpoints, implicit standpoints and arguments can be traced, can be retrieved, can be reconstructed. And so this is what we would like to do. I don't know, maybe I will leave again the floor to Andrea so that he can show what kind of analysis, what kind of tools, both from a qualitative and quantitative point of view, can be used to address this challenge. So, yeah, so these are basically the challenges. I don't know whether...
Yeah, maybe we can go again through the challenges. First of all, is that if we adopt this generalized idea of concession, that every counter argument presupposes some sort of concession. So it presupposes that there is someone who used their reason to formulate an argument, maybe a bad argument, but some kind of argument. Then you can describe various strategies for manifesting or simply presupposing the conceded argument. The argument to which you want to manifest a certain qualified acceptance, which can be as little as there was an argument, everything was wrong about this argument, but there was an argument, and was not just talking, but it was an argument. So that's it gives me the opportunity to make a counter argument. I wouldn't bother making a counter argument if there weren't an argument in the first place. That's the first thing to understand how is manifested, and there could be manifestations that are more or less vague when it's manifested. And the antecedent of the concession and of the counter-argument can be many different things. Can be interlocutive, where I can understand a term in the immediate vicinity of the counter-argument that is being targeted. Or it can be part of a broader polylogical discussion, but it's removed in space, in time, in platform, and so on and so forth. And here there is a huge variety, given the way in which these platforms for discussion don't make a strict difference between what is part of the interaction and what is not part of the interaction. So there can be a huge variety here. Or the counter-argument could be purely anticipatory or imaginative. I imagine someone, maybe a strong man that I want to defeat, putting out an argument. Someone could say, or someone who is an exemplary of the people I'm up against. Or finally remain undecidable between the above opportunities. Ambiguity in the way I'm referring to the antecedent can be also a feature of these counter-arguments in polylogical discussions. And when the discourse is represented, we can look into how it's represented. And so we can have clear cases of the strawman fallacy. We can have cases of deceptive reframings, and we can observe a lot of vagueness. And so it's very hard to accuse, for instance, Mira Murati of making up a deceptive reframing of the accusations that the artists are making towards developers of AI, because it's so vague. How can we say something precise about that? Very often the standpoints that are being discussed are implicit. This is a typical feature. The target standpoint could be implicit, but also the standpoint of the one putting out the counter argument could be implicit as well. However, they are pretty hard to reconstruct, also because in a polylogical discussion, it's typically not sufficient to just say my opinion is not this. It's not that AI is negative for artists. AI is not negative, should be made into a more precise standpoint. AI is positive in precisely this way. This is a theory point that was stressed by two authors that wrote a lot about Polylog, Marcin Lewinsky and Mark Akrus that have this idea that in a polynomial you cannot have variously negative standpoints. You cannot be just against something. You end up being against something because you have your own position, because you are supporting something else. Fifth challenge, when you position in an argument, through a counter-argument, even the most implicit one, you are typically seen and positioned by audiences with respect to implicit standpoints. That was a notion that was introduced, if I'm not mistaken, by Dima Mohammed in a very nice paper about the networked public sphere, where you have certain standpoints that are typically associated to certain arguments. And if you use an argument, you will be attributed also the standpoint that this argument is typically used for. Maybe it's not your standpoint, maybe it's a more extreme standpoint that you would wish. But this is the way these chaotic discussions work. And so finally, the linguistic pattern of concession and counter-argument can have a very indirect relationship with the deeper interaction being realized. I have example also of this point, but it's a little bit too intricate to show. Maybe I just show another example of the type of interaction that we find here is all part of the same interaction. Again, it's on X. Again, our macro case study is always the discussions about artificial intelligence. Here we have a journalist writing for Bloomberg, so economic financial news outlet. This lady covers news about technology. So basically, her job is covering which technology could be a good investment in the future. And she's commenting on Twitter, on X actually, about a demo of Gemini that was back in 2023. Public service announcement about Google's jaw-dropping video of Gemini, the one with the duck. Basically, there was this conversation about the duck that were in very fluid, etc. I think you can find it, still find it online. It was not carried out in real time or in voice. So the video that was released of the demo was kind of deceptive. The model was shown still images from video footage and human prompts narrated afterwards per a spokesperson. So basically, the real interaction wasn't the one that was appearing in the demo, where there was a very fluid conversation with the AI, and the AI was answering using video, and the person was interacting, showing things on video. Basically, I showed a rubber duck to the camera, and the AI understand that it's a duck, and we'll start talking about ducks, etc. And so that was kind of deceptive. And it's interesting that this is in itself a counter-argument, because a demo is an argument. I show you what is this technology is capable in order to show you the potential of the technology, also the interest, also the market value of this technology. And basically, Parmi also in the broader discussion was already making a counter-argument. But then there are people commenting on her post, and you see interesting things. The first comment is, there are lots of comments. We chose just to make an example. In time, it will happen. Once that has been shown that it works in principle, making it fast and effortless goes from science to engineering. This demo shows us that what's possible beyond people widely so few short years back, if I may say. So basically, it's it's not important that what the demo shows is not true yet, because it will in the future. And the difference between what is already true and what is not is the difference between the science and the engineering. So engineering is trivial and science is not. And so basically the commenter counters the counter argument basically with evidence from the future, which is a very nice rhetorical strategy that is found typically in online communication about technologies, and especially connected with hype cycles of technology. Together with Alina Landowska and Marcin, we wrote an article about that. We call that prolepsis, a special kind of prolepsis where you present future events as certain and use them as a premise. In narratology, a prolepsis is when you anticipate event in a narrative, and here you basically anticipate events in the evolution of technology. It was a lot of fun with Marcin and Alina writing this paper. And the second comment is again interesting, because let's say, well, the demo may have been a little deceptive, but the barrier to pivot from text prompts to voice prompts and from still images to real-time video cannot be that high. Again, this kind of dissociation between being really deceptive and being a little deceptive, and the difference is not great. So we find that looking at these patterns, and I hope the examples are speaking out about that, can reveal a lot of what are the not only the main dynamics, but also the pathologies that are found in this large discussion. So if we consider that this overuse of prolepsis is a pathology, that the fact that you consider future things as they could furnish proof, as if they already were already real, we see that in observing this pattern of concession and counter argument, because it's also where the way people evaluate each other's arguments are put to the fore. And so basically by looking at that, we have important indications about the quality of an argument and the kind of pathologies that this argument can have.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Claudia. I would have other questions, but I already asked many questions. So let me check if there are any questions from the audience.
Eduardo has a question.
Eduardo.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Because I have a very poor connection.
Yeah, we do.
You hear me? You hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Do you?
We hear you,
Okay.
maybe not everything. So it's probably the connection is clipping.
Yes, I will speak slowly. I will speak slowly. Thank you all. Thank you, Marcin. Thank you, Andrea and Claudia. My question starts from a confession. That is, I really admire the intuition that counter arguments are concessions. That is, they reveal that the argument is considered as such. So I think it's very clever and very important, and I thank you for that. I have a question, a minor question on that, and it is, why do you think that the assumption that the target argument is an argument indeed is presupposed and not an implicature, and more precisely a relevance implicature? I am aware that here we are at the very boundary between implicatures and presuppositions, but I am curious to know why you prefer to speak of a presupposition and not an implicature.
So that was so basically that goes with my. By the way, I'm not sure Claudia agrees that it's a presupposition. I think she might think it's an implicature. So, but so I will answer because that's my idea. So it depends on my idea of basically it's an idea that comes from Endo Rigotti. And that I have adopted for a long time and still adopted to see illocutions, illocution level meanings, and basically as pragmatic predicates that take as argument places not just the propositional content, but also the participants of the act, and also when the speech acts are relational, that they create the speech act creates a discourse relation. So basically, the anaphoric discourse unit that is being related to is also an argument place of this rhetorical predicate. So argument places are characterized by certain conditions that need to be satisfied in order to predicate to make sense. If I have a predicate like eating, I need to have a living being on the one side eating something that is food. So I cannot say that Wednesday ate the hypotenuse. So that doesn't make sense. That Wednesday ate the hypotenuse. That's a sortal error. But it violates presuppositions that the predicate imposes on it in argument. So basically, if counter arguing is a speech act, then if I analyze that as a rhetorical predicate, the argument I am countering will be one of the argument places of the pragmatic predicates to counter argue. And in order to for the conditions that this pragmatic predicate imposes to the anaphoric argument, there will be the condition that the anaphoric argument is an argument. And now I realize that I'm being incomprehensible because I'm using the word argument in two different meanings. I'm using argument as the
but it's clear.
As the actant of the predicate, and also argument in the sense of
no, it's clear.
Piece of reasoning. So that's basically the theory that's behind the idea that this is a presupposition. In another framework, that would be probably an implicature. But yeah, that's why I've called it a presupposition.
Yeah, if I may, I agree. I mean, you have a point, and in Rigotti's framework, it's absolutely correct. I think really we are here at the boundary between the two concepts, because this is not a semantic presupposition. It's a pragmatic presupposition, which may be called as well a pragmatic precondition. So it's something quite similar to the implicature that the condition holds, and so on. So I was just curious to know why you chose one or the other term, because I really think here we are at a boundary.
Yeah, I mean, it's a presupposition only if you extend really to lots of pragmatic phenomena presupposition, and you give the status of predicates to things like discourse relations that might not be manifested anywhere in language and just be the object of interpretive inferences of the audience. Yeah, that's of course.
Yeah, I think you made it quite clear. Mhm.
Thank you very
I
much.
think
I'm sorry, Eduardo, you want to add
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, I only wanted to say I think you made it quite clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have time for one or two questions.
Marcin has a question.
Okay.
They can be also simpler questions than, than the one of Professor Lowry.
Okay, so if I may, I also very much like this approach that connects concessions to counter-argumentation.
But there was someone who had a question, Marcin. I
I know,
didn't
with Marcin and then.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, sorry. I thought it was another person. Okay, sorry. It's you.
And Christian as well. So later. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Marcin.
Okay, but I just guessed I'm asked to ask my question. I hope
You can.
Yeah. So very quickly, I very much like this approach that connects concessions with counter-argumentation, and I also feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a bunch of work on what's the function of a but in concessions. Like, for instance, AI is great, but what about the costs? Then you frame it in terms of economy. AI is great, but what about the moral issues? Then it's an ethical frame. AI is great, yes, but what about the psychological effects? Whatever. Yes, and then you have various frames. But I was also thinking, what is your take on the yes in concessions? Because it might be extremely interesting in terms of, in order to see, okay, this yes in conceding may serve in terms of illocutionary forces or speech acts in general as, okay, in general, I agree, but there's a caveat, for instance. Or the yes can be, okay, I'm saying yes only because I acknowledge that this is your claim. I don't care about your claim. I disagree with it, but I just say yes. Okay, I acknowledge that you said this, and that's it. And maybe there might be several other functions of the yes in concessions, which might be quite interesting in terms of what the disagreement is about and how strong is the disagreement. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on this? Yes.
That's a super interesting question. Actually, you asked two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is about the frames. That's true. And also an interesting feature of these discussions is that they cross the boundaries between fields of interaction. If you take the example of the discussion about AI, could be a discussion that is about technology. It's about discussion among computer scientists. There were computer scientists saying, oh, we are closer to generalized AI, super intelligence. And other computer scientists said, no, we aren't. So that's an internal discussion. It's about science, about a certain discipline, subdiscipline of computer science. Or a discussion between another discipline, within another discipline, or across disciplines. Like, for instance, there you have linguists that say, oh, large language models are close enough to what we have in our brains. And other linguists that say, not at all. What we have in our brains is completely different from what we have in large language models. But are these two discussions really separate? No, actually, you find many instances where you shift from one to the other very quickly. And someone could say, yes, they can do lots of things, but the way they do it is completely different than the way a human would do that. Is that relevant for a discussion, for the formal discussion, or it's just a shift to another discussion? Or, for instance, you could have lots of things about the work, the job market, and social issues. thinks about the environmental impact, thinks about the creativity and or educational impacts. How would be the impact on education, and so on and so forth, or discussions that are purely like, is AI a good investment or not? There are lots of business discussions about that, whether it's a bubble or financially, or it's a good investment. So all these discussions are intertwined, and often these buts signal the shift from one discussion to another, or the claim that the two discussions are somehow connected. Is the claim right or not? It depends. But yes, often these counter arguments reveal also the shift between various fields of argument, to use a very classic notion for in argumentation theory. Second part of the question was about the yes. Yes, it's interesting because yes, it's a minimal manifestation or anaphorical manifestation of the target. You concede by saying yes, but you say yes to what? If I have a more developed structure, like what you said is factually true, but it's not relevant because it's much more clear what I concede and what I don't. I concede, for instance, the factuality of your argument, but I don't concede the relevance of your argument. Or maybe I concede the relevance, but I don't concede the factuality. Yes, that would be a serious issue, but the evidence that it is the case is not there. In this case, I concede the relevance, but I don't concede the factuality. I don't concede the acceptability of the other argument. But often when I say yes, but, I need to look at the counter argument to see whether it is an undercutter and that it's about relevance. So it could mean that I concede at least some aspects of factuality, but I don't concede the relevance. If it's a rebutter of the premise, then maybe I concede the factuality, but not the relevance. Or maybe it's a matter of sufficiency. I concede some degree of credibility, of factuality, and also some degree of relevance, but it's not enough. So often it's very complicated to understand what exactly is considered and what is not. And sometimes you have signals that are in the conceded segment, but sometimes you need to look at the counter-argument and come up with an analysis of the counter-argument to come up also with a reconstruction of what was conceded and what was not conceded. So really the two parts, concession and counter-argument, are inseparable.
Yeah, and if I just may add, that's why we propose to analyze them together and to go a bit deeper, so to do a bit more fine-grained analysis, because as for now, we did some literature review on studies from discourse analysis, rhetorical studies on these concessive constructions, and they're usually analyzed as a whole, so that the yes but construction, and then from this study, what emerges is basically that conceding when counter-arguing is favorable for the speaker, because as you were saying, you just give an impression that that you are agreeing with your party, with your interlocutor, but then you are actually not. So yeah, they talked about non-optimal agreement, all this kind of stuff. So that showing partial agreement can secure politeness, can secure one's face. So it's favorable for the speaker, okay. But then our proposal is to go a bit deeper, is to see not only the yes but construction as a whole, but then to see what is actually being conceded. And as Andrea was saying, you have to look at the but part to see what is actually conceded with the yes in a nutshell.
Thank you. So we have just time for one question, and I think Christian Santibanez. Right.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I enjoyed them very much. I have a, first of all, I have a general comment about the main question you did, Paola, regarding to what is going on with rhetoric nowadays. Of course, it's undeniable that technology today multiply in I don't know how much, many things, but there is a line of continuity between many practices. This image of networking, rhetoric as a network, and the speaking in front of a multitude, we don't know what kind of interaction were between those attending the speaker. Maybe the very same idea of the network. Of course, technology, to me, in that sense, is not much about words, speech via words, but more about other kind of resources, sounds, emoticons, image, colors. I think multimodality is the new thing in terms of the challenge to do a very new analysis, rhetorical analysis. But I do have two questions, one for Andrea and Claudia, one for Marcin, which is, Marcin, why do you consider that one is about annotation and categories? On one of your examples, you said that one attack, like a hate speech or example of hate speech, is you're wrong. Why we should consider that as an example of a nasty behavior? Because my question is, what about to analyze or to define the audience sensitivity to some kind of a speech? That is for Marcin. And for Andrea and Claudia, it seems to me actually that the example you gave us is not an example of concession. It's more about some kind of strategic maneuvering of this speaker, of this person, because you said, Andrea and Claudia, that the argument is so vague, is so trivial, that we shouldn't consider it even an argument. So actually, she's not considering something, it's just making kind of a general statement to say, I know what some people out there could think about that, but I'm not even taken seriously, because the argument itself was very trivial. If you want to concede something because it's going to be part of your argumentative effort, well, it's going to be a nice reconstruction of the opponent in order to attack them, to attack him or them properly. So I don't know, I don't see if that actually is a concession. My point is that we cannot never be confused by linguistic markers at the same time to consider as a marker of concession, because that was your example. You detected the linguistic market and said, you see, according to this linguistic market, it comes a concession. But I'm not quite sure from a more broader perspective if it's really or not a concession. So what do you think about that?
So can I go first, given that you asked me the first question, Christian? Thank you so much also for this, for your way of answering this general question that basically framed our discussion here. So as for this example, I'm not sure if it was about ethos or pathos or like annotating hate speech, because in terms of annotating hate speech, we are not there yet. We did a paper. So our group. The main author of this paper is Maciej Kulik, who's a postdoc into our group, and Martin Hinton from the Łódź University is one of the co-authors. And basically, this paper is about bringing together philosophical and computer science approaches in order to having an operationalizable definition of hate speech for the future work on how to annotate. But my personal view, maybe I remember I said something along the lines that you don't have to be offensive in language, you don't have to use slurs in order to have hate speech, as long, according to the definition that has been elaborated there, you, for instance, attack the dignity of a group of people or a person, and it can be done in, nice words, so to speak. So, but I wouldn't, I agree with you, and I wouldn't say that saying you are wrong, so you should have the context too, but of course, saying you are wrong might be really on the merits, might be really the criticism of the claim, not a person using stereotypes. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Just to say that to be worried about how sensitive of the audience, because we are focused only in the hate speech, undeniable. Unfortunately, we are living a very nasty time. But how sensitive is the audience to say the dignity of this group is being under attack? So because we already are assuming a definition of dignity, blah, 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 blah. So my point is we to balance the thing, to me, the audience perhaps is too sensitive, or it's just an idea, Marshall, too.
Yeah, it's a very important idea because, well, I can feel offended with something which is objectively not offensive, yes? So I think you mean this, yeah?
Or the other way
Or
around.
the other way around, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, so this is, I fully agree, and the definition that has been elaborated is about to be elaborated in the publication that is about to be submitted, is exactly also about this. Also this audience, taking into account the audience. So many thanks, Christian, for this question. I hope that does justice to the answer.
Andrea and Claudia.
Yeah, okay. So Claudia said that I should respond. That's a very interesting question, Christian. I think that where I see it, what you say is at the level of evaluation. If we are at the level of argument evaluation, not only it's a maneuvering, a rhetorical maneuvering, but it's also a fallacious maneuvering. Actually, it amounts, I think, to a kind of strawman fallacy, because she misrepresents or rather obscures what are the real arguments of the opponents in the broader discussion. But also, you can also see how it's very difficult to make a case for this fallacy in a polylogue, and that deserves further study. However, at the level not of evaluation, but at the level of reconstruction, where we reconstruct the communicative intention of the hardware, I think that there is little doubt that this is intended to be interpreted as a concession. First of all, the language is there, as you said, at the same time, so it contrasts with the positive things that she was saying about AI. We must be honest. This is typically what you do when you do a concession. You are honest towards your opponent, and you acknowledge something. And basically, there is all the language that is there for a purpose, that we recognize an intention to concede. And also the use of but afterwards is typical to introduce a counter argument after a concession has been made. And also she makes a difference with something that, in her view, could be more problematic for them, and something that is not. The whole thing is built and is meant to be interpreted as a, I think, as a concession and counter-argument pattern. The point that is when you superpose this with the real discussion going on, there is a mismatch. And that's where you can see a very cheap rhetorical ploy and also a fallacious one. However, in order to recognize it as fallacious, you need to reconstruct the broader discussion, which is not easy to do. So yes, I think your point is quite valid, but it's really at the level of evaluation, as I see it. While when we say it's concession and counter-argument, it's at the level of reconstructing what's the intention.
And also, if I may just add, I completely see your point, but one could say that all concessions are not real concessions, because then in the end, the communicative intention is not to concede anything. I mean, is to show that one's own point is actually stronger. So that's I don't know, that's also about the nature of concessions per se. And then that is why one should distinguish the two levels of reconstructing the linguistic structures and then analyze the rhetorical side of it. And that's why we would like to develop some analytical tools that can account for both the reconstructive part and then the more qualitative analysis of its effects and functions.
But by the way, you made a lot of concessions and counter-arguments in answering your question.
Yes.
I hope not too fallacious.
Thank you. Thank you.
All good, all good. Just to say to Claudia that I could agree in general that we have to see carefully the concession, but there are domains where concessions are very honest. Mediation, therapies, domains where the people involved really is in a transparent conversation. But here, yes, maybe because I love to doubt, I love to, when people say, let's be honest, you could say, okay, he's not going to be honest. You know? So that's why I got the impression that this person was not, as Andrea said, we are in between in the middle of a fallacy or abusive way of strategic maneuver, derailed one, that yeah, she's not taking carefully seriously the opponent. And because we don't know, because she says something that we already know. So in any case, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. So just thank you. We are moving to the closing of this cycle of Débat sur le débat. The last session will be in May. The second half of May, we are clarifying the date with Susan Herring from Indiana University, Bloomington, who will give a talk on is generative AI the future of a qualitative discourse analysis. So we will yeah, exactly. So, and we will announce more clearly the date as soon as we define it. So thank you again to our guests and thank you to the audience. This session was recorded, so you can find it on our site, Oliandinom at humanum.fr. Maybe Caroline wants to write in the chat, write down in the chat our URL. And so thank you again and see you soon, I hope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
organizing this. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.